Righto guys, how's it going? Craig here with Year Now. And I'm going to have a quick talk today. Today I'm just going to do a recording with a presentation and just riff on some ideas. I'm going to talk about economics, currency, and the good life. Alright, so currency, currency has properties, otherwise it's not currency. And those are scarcity, fungibility, divisibility, durability, transferability. Right, so I'll talk about scarcity last. Fungibility is, I don't care whether I've got one $5 note or another $5 note, they're the same. Right, they're fungible. You can swap them, no worries. Divisibility, cents, dollars, and one share or 10 shares, that sort of thing. Durability, that they last. That your dollar is your dollar and it's not going to dissolve in water or something like that. And transferability is, I can give you $10, transfer it to you, right? So that's all, those bases all covered by, Bitcoin and gold, but with digital, or fiat currencies, which are what all national currencies are now, since we got rid of the gold standard in, I think it was 1972, all currencies are now fiat currencies, which just means that they're not pinned or pegged to anything. They used to be pegged to gold, they're not anymore. Right? And digital, because now that we've got computer systems and the internet, you can pretty much just do everything online and without actually using cash, like money, paper money, right? And you can create it. So you can just go get a home loan. That money isn't wages earned and put into bank accounts by people. 95% of that will just be created on a screen, on your phone screen, and it just says you've got a loan for 500 grand to go buy a house. Right, that money just popped into being right there and there. It's got fuck all to do with production, right? So this is the problem that underlies a lot of things going on in the world right now, is that our currency is no longer scarce. And that's, it's the same if it's Aussie dollars or pounds or US dollars or, most national currencies. Basically all are. They don't have this property of scarcity anymore. Right, so capitalism used to be an extended barter, pretty much. Now people will debate this and say not really, that's part of it, and they do have points and what have you, but in the days of Adam Smith and what have you, capitalism was conceived as an extended barter. You produce and therefore you can consume, right? And of course there's credit and finance and all of that, but say you borrowed money from the bank. That money would have been put in there, deposited there by a customer who earned wages by producing something, and therefore it's sort of backed by production, you could say. Right? Extended barter. I've got a banana, you've got a chair. Instead of a traditional barter where I come up to you and say, oh, I've got a bunch of bananas, I go, would you like bananas because I want that chair? The bloke goes, no, I want fish. So you got to go find a bloke who wants fish, and now he's got fish, and now you go, does the bloke who has fish, does he want bananas? No, he wants something else, and off you go, and you just go further and further back, and just, right, so this is what currency does, it sits between you, what you produce and what you consume, and it just facilitates barter, makes it altogether easier. Right, whereas nowadays, we've got, that extended barter, and this addition of finance or bubble blowing finance, whatever you want to call it, but it's just created money. It's not, that money doesn't exist because something was produced. It's just been put, five and 5 zeros have been put into your bank account as just digits, right? So this is, you've got that money plus the money from production chasing to consume. Now, like, bank's not going to lend you money to go to McDonald's, right? So it's not going to affect large parts of the economy and what have you. But assets, assets where you need finance to buy them. It affects that. People borrowed money when it was an extended barter. So they needed to borrow, and now because banks can create money, they also lend you all that created money, and prices will go up as long as there's currency available or finance available to fund it, right? And then you get into a situation where all that created money suddenly needs to be destroyed by somebody, which is to say it's paid back and then cancelled out of the system. So then you get into a situation, like this is all good because it's not all good, but it works well at the beginning because you've got all that money chasing consumption, so it drives consumption, which drives production. But of course, when people are producing to to get rid of debts and what have you, and then they're not consuming, so they're producing more than they're consuming, well, see how that turns into a big problem. And yeah, so this really got going. Well, gold standard got dropped in the 70s. Then in the 80s, you had Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and they were the big conservatives, and the resurgence of conservatism in the West, you could say. And they deregulated banks and basically allowed scarcity as a property of their currencies to just be completely done away with. And that wasn't an intention, it wasn't foreseen or any of that. It was just something that, well, you only think about it now because you can see it, but back then it was yet to manifest. And so, yeah, it was just an unforeseen consequence. And I'm sure if they knew, they wouldn't have done it, but there we go. Yeah, so that's what we live in nowadays. It's what caused the GFC. They'll say it was subprime loans. But what are subprime loans? It's creating money to lend to people. You have almost no chance of paying it back. Right, so that's the problem. Right, so let's first of all look at why do we have currency? What are the end goals of currency? And like I said, it's medium of exchange. I've got bananas, you got a chair, and I want a chair. So we have currency in between us, and I give you money, somebody bananas for money, and I give the money to you for your chair. And you go get what you want, and so on and so forth, right? So, that obviously still works, scarcity intact or not. It's just people are exchanging or consuming without producing, in the case of created money. Then, of course, I'm just going to skip here to store of value. If you are going to live to 85 and retire at 60 and start working at 20, you're going to work for 40 years and be retired for 25 years. So that's like a ratio of if you're going to consume one unit at the present time, then you need to store 0.6 units so that you can retire, right? And you get all these stores of value. It might be stocks, it might be just a bank account or a home or various assets, they're all over the place, stores of value. And of course you need a unit of account so that you know how you're tracking with your store of value, or how much you're spending now compared to how much you're saving, and interest rates, and what your position is, right? If it was all just based on a feeling, you'd be feeling uncertain for sure, right? Pardon, right. So you need a unit of account. Then currency needs to perform a speculation function, because not all stores of value are the same, right? It depends on your worldview, what you're going to expect to happen in the future. You're going to predict the future, right? So it's 1997, you can buy Apple shares or Kodak shares. One guy does one and one guy does the other, and what you're saying is they're both saying this company will be around in the future and it'll be more valuable than it is now. Speculation. You might be right, you might be wrong. In the case of the bloke who bought Kodak, he's wrong. Kodak's gone. You've lost your money. In the case of the guy who bought Apple shares, they escaped the brink of bankruptcy and became the most valuable company in the world. right? It's kind of like gambling. The house wins, but even if the house weren't winning, one player is winning, another player is losing. Somebody puts $20 in and $10 in and gets 20 out, and some other bloke puts 20 in and gets 10 out or gets nothing out. And you want that freedom. You want to say, I'm going to put my money where I want to put it. I want to use my worldview to decide where to store value. I'm not going to have the government tell me how to do it, or so on and so forth. So what's really affected is the store of value and speculation. These end goals are, what would you say, distorted by lack of scarcity. Because you need finance, off you go, and there's a bunch of people competing. Well, they're not competing for finance, they can all pretty much get finance based on income and things like that. And so they'll lend as much as they can to you. Of course, they want to get their money back, so they're not going to lend you $2 million if your income in every year is 30 grand, but they'll push you as far as you can go, pretty much, right? So now you're buying a house for $1 million, or whatever, and people speculate. Where people can speculate, where you fuel speculation, it goes. And so people see house prices going up, they go, look at that, I better get involved. Which of course is like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and everyone jumps on the bandwagon and prices go up until the market's saturated. And like, think of the Bitcoin bubble recently, classic example. Price goes up, people look at that and go, oh, I better get in. A bunch of people jump in, and price goes up, and more people jump on, and people get on the bandwagon gradually, and then gets to 25 grand a Bitcoin, and there's not enough people out there willing and able to put 25 grand into Bitcoin. So things slow down, and then the price drops, and of course people are speculating they want to gain, and I think this is a good time to sell. Bought at 10, it's 25, I'll make 15 grand on my Bitcoin, I'm going to sell now. And everyone gets off the bandwagon quicker than they got on, and the price drops to some fundamental level. And because Bitcoin is a scarce currency, it's got a limit of 21 million Bitcoins will be made. It will have some store of value, some fundamental intrinsic store of value that things will return to. And I mark my words, in 5 years or whatever, there'll be another Bitcoin speculation event, and try and buy early and sell when it gets to the top. But yeah, I mean, people know how speculation works, and they make money off of it. So, with all this created money, it's just pushes assets, say asset prices, at the asset side of the price matrix, just drives those prices up, and it's got a lot of that danger of everyone getting off the bandwagon at the same time and a crash. That's exactly what happened in the GFC. House prices were falling back to their intrinsic value, whatever that was, and then the government stepped in and created more money and did quantitative easing, which was creating even more money. So they basically solved the problem of created money by creating a lot more money, so that's going to be an interesting unfolding, whenever the hell that happens, who knows. So, it's distorted store of value and speculation as end goals, and not in a good way, right? If you park your money somewhere, you want to know that that house is going to be worth what you paid for it, at least. You don't want to be living in doubt. And is there going to be a crash? What's it going to bottom out at? Am I going to lose all of my hard work producing goods and services so that I could buy that house? And you're fueling speculation, which is what brings about all these events. So basically, we need to sort out a couple of. Otherwise, we're not getting what we want out of currency. So let's talk about this whole man versus machine idea, which is, you know, machines are taking all our jobs, and there's going to be no work for people, and we need the government to look after everyone. But you got to ask, well, what's wrong with part time? Everyone wants full time work, and the amount of full time jobs is dropping, and the amount of part time jobs is rising. But at the end of the day, what is wrong with part time work? If part time is all it takes to contribute your share to production and to get the share of consumption you want out of it, then what's wrong with part time? Why? If you talk to somebody who wants full time, why? It's because they got a mortgage that they got to pay off, and they got an insurance policy, and they're all getting assets that have been, that if a house that's got all this created money and it can stay at a store of value of 500 grand or whatever, that's good. But it's working now. How long is it going to work? And are you going to tell me that you're sure it's going to keep working? So, what is wrong with part time? Because what's actually needed? Let's say civilization gets so advanced that machines can do everything, and labor is only needed. Each person only needs to contribute half an hour of work a day. Well, what's wrong with everyone doing half an hour of work? Contribution to production, getting their share of consumption out. What's wrong with that? So this idea that machines can actually take your job away and you'll be left without a job, not really. Not if we could sort out our currency problems and make sure that we have a reliable store of value, that we can speculate within reason, and you can go to your work and you can make sure you've got enough for the present and enough for the future. You can do a bit of speculation based on the future, and you can keep track of what's going on. What else do you need? Whereas right now, people are getting bent right out of shape, trying to make payments, mortgage payments, and things like that. And if they're going to give you enough rope, if they can give you as much rope as you can take, well, you're going to take as much rope and you're just going to be right on the edge of your bandwidth. And that's the problem. Is why should people be right on the edge of their bandwidth trying to do things? Yeah, I mean, so let's say your house isn't worth 12 annual salaries, so it's not a big store of value, but it'll open up other avenues like savings accounts and stocks, and so you're not going to just put all your money into your house. You'll put money in savings accounts and your super and things like that. But yeah, economics is just the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. There's no reason intrinsically for machines to make people redundant. Economics is centered around people. If there's no one contributing to production, no one's going to be able to consume. That's it. So, what's wrong with part-time? If we put that scarcity back into our currency, maybe the part-time work rate would double. What's wrong with that? If you can work 30 hours a week and make ends meet, what's wrong with that? I'm sure nobody is going to complain that, and the workaholics, they'll still be able to compete for those full-time jobs and do 80 hours a week. No worries. But what intrinsically is wrong with a part-time job? That's the goal, isn't it? You want to get your chores done as soon as possible so you can go play. Right. So what's an ideal solution? Imagine you elected somebody and they passed legislation, changed the constitution, made it constitutional, that everything was done in pure extended barter, and that there's no money creation allowed at all. Well, you're going to have a whole bunch of unintended consequences that you're going to think about. Like, what will happen to the price matrix? So, combine harvesters might go from $800,000 each to $100,000 each, but they're made in America, and America still has finance. You know, who's going to produce? Are they going to produce a harvester and be able to bring it into Australia, or are they going to have to produce a cheaper one, a simplified version? Are they even going to bother doing that? Is Australia going to? Is it going to get the manufacturing industry going in Australia again? They're going to start making their own harvesters, right? Because what will happen to our price matrix compared to the US's price matrix without with finance included, and how are these different countries going to interface? What's going to happen to exchange rates, and therefore to imports and exports, and trade? You'd think it would make it a favorable environment, but how's that going to play out? And then other countries, like, how are you going to stop hot money, like all that created Chinese money that's chasing property in Australia, Sydney and Vancouver and the UK and all over the Western world, where people think it's a safer investment? Well, how are you going to stop that without stopping good money? So, yeah, and also, what are the chances of this are next to nil. Right, it's just, we slowly moved away from that extended barter to this finance. It was a slow thing. Eventually, they got rid of the gold standard, and then that progressed, and then banking deregulation, and then dot-com bubble, and then the housing bubble, and it's just got to this point slowly. And how do you go back? Well, it seems like you're going to have to go back slowly as well. So let's look, like, what would a practical solution look like? Something that would probably have to happen is that you limit the amount of debt in an economy. So if you look on YouTube, there's a YouTube channel called Prof. Steve Keen. No spaces. And he's an economics professor, an Aussie bloke who, he's a post-Keynesian economist, and I don't like Keynesians because they like big government. And there's some of these post-Keynesians, there's a group of them who are into modern monetary theory, where they just don't believe the government ever has to pay back its debts. They think the government should be allowed to create money and spend it how they want. So it's a big government lefty problem, and do they even realize the economic shambles that they want to bring about? But yeah, so anyway, I'm skeptical of these blokes, but the Steve Keen guy uses complex theory and chaos theory and dynamics to model economics rather than the neoclassical reductive models, and then trying to construct prediction of the future or a prediction of a future reality out of that. So all that chaos theory, it initially started with I think it was a weatherman named Lorenz, and he was trying to create a model, or he created a model to predict weather. So he had this computer, and it printed out a graph of the weather for the next X many days. Eventually he stopped it, and he thought, I need a second copy. So he took the inputs off the initial inputs off the graph printout, which went to 3 decimal places, inputted them back into the computer, printed a second copy. But the initial inputs went to 6 decimal places. It's a tiny difference. First 10 days, graphs look identical. And after 10 days, completely unrecognizable to each other. And he just thought, what the fuck's going on here? And he's trying to create or predict a future reality based on reductions. You can't do that. But that's the problem, is you can't go to infinite decimal places with your inputs. So he worked out eventually that the tiniest differences in inputs, or so let me put it this way: the slightest error in your inputs is going to create a completely unusable prediction in some amount of time. With weather, that's after 10 days, and it varies. It varies, But 10 days they can tell you what the weather will be like reasonably accurate. After that, they can't tell you anything. So like you get all these blokes trying to make climate models. Well, somebody should just change the inputs by a tiny amount and see how long the output is recognizable, and just maybe it's 10 years, and say, well, you can't take any model seriously predicting 10 years ahead. You're getting people predicting what the weather and what the climate in 2100 will be like, 4 degrees warmer. Well, we know with chaos theory that weather can only look into it 10 days ahead. Climate will probably be exactly. Climate is more complicated. It's just another level up. So yeah, completely. But anyway, aside from climate, I don't know. That's a bit of a dog tangent there. But so the Steve Keen, he's been doing this with creating economic models with chaos theory, and he showed basically that if you can let the amount of debt in a GDP sort of stabilize at 60%, then you've got a stable economy and it's a stable system. But if the debt blows past that and goes up to past 60%, it eventually spirals out of control. The whole economy crashes. And obviously, in real life, they sort of come up with solutions, and those solutions might just be delays and amplifiers. But the point was pretty clear. Don't let your amount of debt in your economy go past 60%. Otherwise, you end up in stagnation, like Japan. Seems like America's in a bit of a stagnation and all of that. But so maybe you create a separate currency, like just a digital currency, and you fix the amount of money to 50% of GDP, and maybe you adjust that through the years and try and find an optimum. But that's where you can buy the currency, and that currency allows you to borrow an X amount, and there'll be an exchange rate for it, and that's demand for it will be built into the price, all of that jazz. But basically, if you have, let's say you buy $10,000 worth of this currency, say it allows you to borrow 100 grand, and the total amount that can get borrowed in the economy is limited to 50% of GDP, then something like that. If you could hammer out all the details, that seems to at least it won't be a pure extended barter, but at least your asset prices won't be so blown out. Houses might be comparative to now, maybe it'll be like 6 times an annual salary, or less, maybe 4 times, I don't know. And maybe you're quite happy with that, because that's quite a decent store of value, and it's stable, or stable enough. It's not going to completely, there'll be business cycles and what have you, but maybe you're happy with that. Maybe finance is easier than with pure extended barter, where you would have to have, if you wanted to borrow something, people would have to save it, and you'd be paying a lot to borrow. You wouldn't have cheap interest rates. So maybe it's better to have this sort of mixed system. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Then, of course, if you did something like that, you could see what happens to how your country would interface with other countries. What would happen to exchange rates and trade and imports and exports and all those sorts of things. But what are the politics of this? Because this, you'd have to solve this at a political level. You couldn't solve it through private means or through business. So, like the big thing in politics that a lot of things come down to is taxation without representation is theft. That's how America was born. Right? the Eureka Stockade uh, blockade, sorry, whatever, it was stockade, blockade, whatever, in Aussie, right? That was over taxes. Brexit. Why should the EU tax us and we don't get to choose our representatives who decide how to tax us? Right? Brexit, bloody Rhodesia turning into Zimbabwe. Why should a bunch of people who aren't contributing to the tax revenue, why are they going to get a vote on how things should be run? And then the consequent bloody collapse of Zimbabwe into its situation now, and the fact that, well, that's not even reversible. How would you reverse that? Taxation and representation. You got to get that right. Otherwise, there's no coming back from it. And so, yeah, maybe in the old days it was simple. You were taxed, you had zero representation. Whereas now it's more slyer, it's more underhanded, it's taxation, and you get a bit of representation, but you're underrepresented. Right? That's like the dull bludger gets the same vote that you do, and you're the bloke that is at the, you're taking the full brunt of progressive taxation. You're getting half your income taken off you. Well, are you represented or are you underrepresented? Then, of course, you've got governments just borrowing like a bloody crack addict or something, just getting into debt. Well, it's you in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years' time that's going to have to pay that bill. So your current self or current generations are overrepresented, and the future generations are underrepresented. You know, a bunch of people getting benefits now at the cost of future taxpayers. Oh, you got to get your taxation and your representation. You got to get the system working there. Otherwise, it just leads to trouble. So, yeah, maybe you bring this about in the first place through tax reform. Bring in a simple tax, a flat tax, and simplify the code. So it's just dead simple. Limit your government spending to the revenue, right? If the Department of Agriculture's budget drops by half, well, then you prioritize and you do the most important things, and then everything else, sorry, that can be done. So tax reform, you start there, then maybe you introduce this currency, maybe you put something in the constitution if that's even possible. And you make sure that the government, if the government wants to borrow, it's borrowing from this limited pool as well. And you're going to have proper representation with a flat tax, and borrowing won't be as favoured an option as it is now. So yeah, we got to get this right, because you don't want the wheels coming off the global economy again. You don't want GFC 2. Well, I suppose maybe if that's going to happen, it's going to happen. But if and when it happens, mostly when, I think, but when it happens, you got to put a stop to it. You can't just allow them to delay it to GFC 3, which gets even bigger. Got to try and say, right, there's a shitstorm, shit's hit the fan, let's try solve it now. And then, maybe you have a hard time through that, but you avoid these big recessions when you just go back to normal, run-of-the-mill recessions. Stop making your economy a house of cards that's just going to blow away. And the danger is, next GFC rolls around, who's going to get to solve that? And what if their solution is just terrible? We've got to make currency scarce again, guys. We've got to sort that out. It's one of the biggest problems in the world right now. And sorting it out would just make, it'll just sort so much economics out. And that's just, economics as a means to human ends. It's like, it affects your life, man. If you want to live the good life, you can't do it where economics is taking up all your bandwidth. So yeah, it's got to make currency scarce again, make the country great again. Yeah, so subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, share it with your friends, talk about it, and let's hope that we can get things sorted out next time the shit hits the fan, GFC2, and start laying some foundations for a better system in the future. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.